Princess, you ready? Alright. The Trojan War makes riveting reading as the iconic Helen of Troy seduced and abducted by seduced and abducted. It has Greeks versus Trojans, bravery and brutality, heroes and villains aplenty, and a famous wooden horse. For centuries, Troy was considered a city of legend, more imaginary than Arthur's Camelot. It took Heinrich Schliemann in the 19th century to establish that Troy was a real place. Its remnants, a large mound in the northwest Turkey known as Hisarlik. Excavations show that Hisarlik is in fact multiple cities, each built on top of the ruins of its predecessor. So which level is the Troy of Paris and Hector? Schliemann, an accomplished self-publicist, tried hard to prove that it should be the level in which he discovered his famous Priam's treasure. Inconveniently, this turned out to be over a millennium too early to fit the circumstances of the story. Archaeologists now say that it was more likely candidate is the mundanely labelled level 7A, where they have unearthed evidence of violent destruction and a huge fire. Let me just take a bite of my pizza. The Trojan War had a lively warm-up in the War of the Seven against Thebes, which was for some years the largest war ever fought in the Greek peninsula. The origin of the war lay with the sons of Oedipus, Polynices, and Eteocles, with their incestuous father exiled to Colonus near Athens. They were trying hard to pretend that he had never existed. An embittered Oedipus cursed the pair neither to live nor rule over his old kingdom of Thebes. Polynices and Eteocles weren't prepared to take their father's word for this, no matter how colourfully expressed. After all, Thebes was now one of the largest and richest kingdoms in Greece. So, ignoring their father's prophecy that they were doomed to slay each other, the brothers agreed to rule the kingdoms by taking turns of 1 year each. The younger, Eteocles, took first turn and promptly declared himself sole king, claiming, as many others have since, if we must do wrong, doing wrong to gain power is the best reason. Polynices fled to Argos, where he forged a coalition of the willing to support his claim to Thebes. The Magnificent Seven, the coalition, were led by Dastrius, king of Argos. Amphiaraus, a cousin of Helen of Troy, was a reluctant coalition member, because as a seer, he knew that the 6 of the 7 were doomed. Dastrius would emerge as the sole survivor, saved by the speed of his horse, Orion, the gift of Heracles. In the end, Zeus did the honours personally for Amphiaraus with a thunderbolt. Another thunderbolt casualty was the hero Caponius. Smitten even as he scaled the walls of Thebes, the victim of his own hubris, since he had claimed that not even Zeus could stop him. Eteocles, son of another grave king, died in the fighting, as did his fellow hero, Hippomedon. Parthenopaius, a son of Atlanta, and a friend of a son of Heracles, was crushed by a rock hurled from the walls. The mighty Tydeus was the son of the king who had organized Atlantis, Caledonian boar hunt. When ambushed, Tydeus single-handedly killed 50 of his attackers before perishing. The son of Tydeus was Diomedes, whom affectionately generally rate with Achilles and Ajax as one of the greatest warriors at Troy. Finally, there was Polynices. He ended the war as his father Oedipus had predicted, by dying with his brother when the pair met in hand-to-hand combat. Antigone, the sister of Polynices, insisted on burying her brother, even though Cerion, who had taken over as king of Thebes, decreed that Polynices should be left unburied. For her pains, Antigone too was buried, alive, in a small underground chamber. Her fate thereafter is disputed. Both Sophocles and Euripides wrote plays on the topic in ancient Greece. In one version, she kills herself just before her beloved Hermione arrives to rescue her, which is the theme that Shakespeare later adapted into the tragic ending of Romeo and Juliet. I shall take another bite.
Curry is now following.
Here we are.
So yeah, Romeo and Juliet only died because of ancient Greece.
Lol.
Just as the War of the Seven set the scene for the Trojan War among the Greeks, the aftermath of the wedding of Thetis aligns the various factions of Olympus. Thetis, it will be recalled, was the Nereid who befriended Hephaestus and Dionysus in their times of trouble. Both Poseidon and Zeus contemplated seducing Thetis, or assaulting her. The pair never seem to have worked out the difference. Poseidon stopped as soon as he learned that the son of Thetis was fated to be greater than his father. The sea god took care not to pass on the prophecy to his brother, and Thetis was just about to be seduced by Zeus when the Libonius god, who providentially warned off by Prometheus, whom Heracles had just freed. It was decided to give Thetis a relatively unassuming husband, the still very distinguished former Argonaut and Caledonian boar hunter, Peleus, a friend of Chiron the Centaur. Everyone liked Thetis, and as we saw above, all the gods turned up for the wedding, even Eris, who was not invited. Eris responded to her exclusion by lobbing a golden apple into the wedding feast that bore the inscription, "For the fairest." Athena, Hera, and Aphrodite each immediately claimed the apple, rather ungraciously overlooking the fact that Thetis herself was stunningly beautiful, and she was the bride. Zeus delegated arbitration to Paris, a son of Priam of Troy, who had shown his impartiality before. Though fair, the three goddesses did not play that way. Each attempted to bribe Paris with her speciality. Hera offered dominion over Europe and Asia, but Paris ignored this. And also Athena's suggestion that she give him wisdom. Aphrodite, however, could call on the mighty Eros, who conquers all, and Aphrodite offered Paris the love of the most beautiful woman on earth. Paris accepted, and thereafter, the jealous wrath of Hera and Athena doomed Paris and his family and his city. Oh, fuck. Both modern archaeology and classical myth agree that Troy had undergone severe damage several times since its founding. Though the ancient writers suggest the gods, monsters, and Heracles had done the job, while the moderns opt for marauding tribes or Hittite armies. One second. Or Hittite armies. However, after considerable renovation, including walls rebuilt by Apollo and Poseidon, Troy at the time of the assault of Helen was a formidable nut to crack. It is a popular misconception that Homer's Iliad tells the story of the Trojan War. In fact, it relates to the incidents that occurred during it, during a deadly action-packed fortnight some 9 years into. What follows here is a capsule summary of that war, followed by a longer description of the story. TLDR. Paris went to Sparta to pick up his payment from Aphrodite. He was not at all concerned that Helen was already married to King Menelaus. While the king was away at a funeral, Paris simply decamped with Helen on a good part of Menelaus's treasure. Menelaus did not take this well, because of Helen's exceptional beauty. She had been courted by all the great men of Greece, who swore that they would unite to protect her honour, or protect the honour of whomever eventually won the lady's heart. This oath, known as the Pact of Tynaridius, after Helen's stepfather, effectively united the people of Greece into a national Archaean treaty. And this swung into action on the news of the abduction. After some difficulty in locating Troy, the Greeks eventually sent Menelaus and the eloquent Odysseus to demand Helen and reparations. King Priam of Troy refused. The walls of his city had been built by gods and were unassailable, so he defied the Greeks and told them to do their worst. Getting their fleet to Troy was not easy, and when the Greeks finally arrived, they discovered that Troy had allies on the mainland of Asia, including the Amazonians. The early part of the war involved cutting off the Trojans from their supplies. However, Troy itself was well stocked, and the Greeks were forced to become part-time farmers to keep their army in the field for year after year. After 9 long years, things were not much nearer a conclusion. A host of heroes had fallen, and even a few gods had more than their pride injured. The Greeks captured a prophet who reported that they could never win because the gods had set conditions for a victory that the Greeks had not fulfilled. In order to triumph, the Greeks must get the son of a now deceased Achilles to fight on their side, use the bow of Heracles, obtain the palladium and an adequate statue of Athena currently in Trojan possession, and bring the remains of Pelops to the war. The Greeks industriously brought their war operation into compliance with the divine terms for victory. Then Odysseus, the only Greek who had grasped that warfare involved more than poking sharp objects into people, came up with a cunning plan to get behind the Trojan walls. The Greeks pretend to withdraw, leaving behind the famous Trojan horse, which was in fact a Greek horse, though admittedly for the Trojans. This massive wooden sculpture was left supposedly to be a sacrifice to Poseidon. However, it was taken into Troy to mock the Greeks. Its hollow interior, however, was packed with an elite team of Greek commandos. These emerged from the horse after dark, and Troy's gates were opened. Thereupon, the Greek army expended 10 years of frustration in a single night. few Trojans escaped. Is that you coming near me, please? Yeah. Zeus was enamored, leading the or the dramatis personae of the war. Zeus was enamored with his young cupbearer, Ganymede, who was a Trojan. He was therefore a pro-Trojan neutral in the war. He did his best to keep the gods from interfering, but no one really paid much attention to him. But in order of seniority for the gods, well, the Greeks were also involved in the war, but in order of seniority for the gods was Poseidon. He helped Apollo build the walls of Troy, but the Trojan king for the time refused to pay him. After that, Poseidon hated the Trojans, and never much inclined to listen to Zeus anyway. He personally took part in the fighting for a while after his grandson was killed. Athena, naturally pro-Greek by inclination, she also, of course, had a special grudge against Paris. A little remembered attribute of Athena is that as Athena Primachos, Athena of the battle line, the lady was a war goddess and an expert general and strategist. She was generous with her advice and twice brutally beat up Ares when he interfered on the Trojan side. So even the god of war as a whole thing loses to Athena. 1 minute, I'm going to finish my pizza.
There we go. One more along. I've already got further than I did when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I've definitely gotten better.
Yeah.
Woohoo! Yep, I am. I very much am having fun.
Take a drink.
Yeah. Oh, baby. I mean, you're unmuted on my stream, but now I've got to work out how to. Ah, here we go.
Anyway. Hera, pro-Greek for much of the same reason as Athena. She was also the paragon of, or patron of Argos and Mycenae, the leading Greek nations in the war. In Book 4 of the Iliad, Zeus accuses her of wishing to enter the gates of the long walls of Troy to devour Priam raw, and also Priam's sons, and all the Trojans, so assuage your anger. Hephaestus generally took Athena's lead, not least because of his unrequited love for the maiden goddess and his dislike of his wife Aphrodite, who took the Trojan side. Hera was his mother, and a craftsman god was also a loyal son. So he was susceptible to the charms of Thetis. Thetis, however, she was determined to make her son Achilles immortal, and so fed him on ambrosia and at night tucked him into the embers of the fire to burn away his mortality. Her outraged husband, Peleus forbade the practice when he discovered it, since he had already lost 5 other sons to the roasting process. No wonder why it took so long for the penny to drop. In a sulk, Thetis abandoned her husband and son and returned to the sea, but she continued to advise Achilles while he was fighting at Troy. For the kings was King Agamemnon. A dark heart filled with anger is how Homer described King Agamemnon in Book 1 of the Iliad. The grandson of Pelops and the brother of Menelaus, he married Clytemnestra, the sister of Helen. As king of Mycenae, the leading Greek state at the time, he led the war effort against Troy. He was ruthless, immoral, and generally a nasty piece of work, even by the low standards of his compatriots. His name, Agamemnon, means most resolute. A worship of that name, HMS Agamemnon, played a distinguished part of the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805. Menelaus, king of Sparta, wanted his wife back, but above all, he wanted the head of Paris on a plate. Odysseus, or, to the Romans, Ulysses. Odysseus was king of Ithaca, and reputed by some to be the son of the cunning twice-lived Sisyphus. He was deeply reluctant to go to war and abandon his beloved Penelope, and fainted madness when the trick was discovered by one Palamedes. He made sure Palamedes later came to a sticky end. Odysseus left his son in the care of a Greek called Mentor, who has ever since given his name to that role. Diomedes, the hero of choice for the knowledgeable mythologists. Diomedes, king of Argos, was a favourite of Athena, and he wounded both Ares and Aphrodite when the pair tried physically to intervene in the combat. On meeting an old friend at the Trojan side, he stopped fighting for a chat and exchanged armour. He helped Odysseus steal the Palladium, which was one of the victory conditions for the Greeks, and he was one of the 50 warriors who hid inside the walls. For the heroes, we have Achilles, deciding to make her son invulnerable.
Them earlier.
Deciding to make her son invulnerable, she could not make him immortal. Thetis dunked the boy in the river Styx as a parting gift. She could not touch the water herself, so the part where she held the boy was Achilles' weak spot. In fact, his Achilles heel. An attempt to keep Achilles from Troy by disguising him as a girl failed, and the hero went on to distinguish himself and die in the war. He was proud, cruel, and arrogant to the point of stupidity. In short, he was the perfect archetype for the Greeks at Troy. We have Ajax,
bollocks.
the grandson of Heracles, Ajax, also known as Aias, seldom harbored an evil thought about anyone, mainly because thinking caused him pain and wasted time better spent on hitting people. His one initiative was planning an attack on his own side, from spite at not being given armour to slain Achilles. Athena sent him mad, and he attacked a herd of cattle instead, and an event which inspired the moving Ajax of Sophocles. Afterwards, he committed suicide. Thersites, an anti-hero, was of ignoble birth, bold and bandy-legged. He constantly mocked the pretensions of his betters, and correctly describes the antics of Agamemnon and Achilles as childish squabbling. He was knocked out by Odysseus for suggesting the Greeks should pack it all in and go home, and finally killed when he made fun of Achilles once too often. Dentor, a Greek herald who had the voice of 50 men, deserving of mention as loud announcements loud announcements may even today be given in a censoring voice. And that is the side of the Greeks. Now, for the side of for the Trojans, give me a moment. For the women, the last part of the no wait, I was wrong. The women last because apart from the uxorious Odysseus, this is where they came into consideration in participants of the war. Iphigenia, eldest daughter of Agamemnon, the Greek fleet was beguiled at Arlius by several accounts because the impiety of Agamemnon towards Artemis. Discovering that sacrificing Igraphia would speed up the fleet, the king sent for his daughter on the pretense that she was to marry Achilles. The sacrifice worked through, by some accounts, Artemis substituted a hind at the last minute and took Igraphia to be her priestess. Briseis, an orphan taken by Achilles. She became an orphan after he had killed her parents and the rest of her family. She served as Achilles' concubine until Agamemnon lost his bedmate, demanded Briseis as a replacement. Achilles responded by going on strike and refusing to leave his quarters and join the war. And for the Trojans, the vigor of the Trojan defense has led to the saying to work like a Trojan, and it was perhaps the impenetrability of the Trojan walls that inspired the naming for the family planet device, which is how Trojans are best known in North America. It is therefore appropriate that the foremost divine champion of the Trojans was Aphrodite. The goddess of love was prepared to stand by Paris and, anyway, had a dispute with Menelaus about the non-delivery of some cattle the king had promised as a sacrifice in exchange for winning Helen's hand. Not so much pro-Trojan as pro-Aphrodite, Ares considered the entire war a huge, sparkly present laid on for his personal enjoyment. However, when he got carried away and joined in the fighting, he was wounded by Diomedes. He immediately fled thereafter to supervise the slaughter from a safe distance. And Apollo, completing the pro-Trojan faction at the top of the alphabet, Apollo seems to have supported the Trojans simply because the conduct of the Greeks offended his civilized sensibilities. It did not help that almost as the first action of Achilles was disembarking was to kill Timaeus, one of Apollo's sons. The last straw came when the Greeks kidnapped the daughter of one of his priests, and Apollo responded by smiting the entire camp of Greeks with a pestilence. With the Trojan royal family, we have Priam. As the last survivor of the ruling house, Priam became king of Troy when Heracles wrecked the place and killed the rest of his family. By the time of the Trojan War, Priam was a very old man who had some 50 children and a number of wives. Until his fateful decision to stand up to the Greeks, he had ruled well and wisely. He had an unbearable task of going to Achilles to plead for the body of his son, Hector, and was in turn killed by Neoptolemus, a son of Achilles. Greatest of the Trojan warriors, Hector is depicted as honest, kindly, and a ferocious fighter. With the help of Apollo, he slew Patroclus, the friend of Achilles, who wore the hero's armor to engage the Greeks when Achilles was sulking. Achilles was very annoyed by this. The love of Paris for Helen would have been more romantic had the man not been an adulterer. He was married to a river nymph called Enion when he abducted Helen, a thief and a coward who initially shrank because back into the ranks of the sight at the sight of Menelaus. Homer refers to him as quote hated by all, even as his dark death unquote. He was the one who slew Achilles by shooting him in the heel with a poisoned arrow. When Paris was dying, shot in turn by an arrow from the bow of Heracles, Onion could have healed him, but declined to do so.
Fuck.
I think we know why. For the heroes, we have Aeneas, son of Aphrodite by a mortal. Aeneas was of a different branch of Trojan royalty. He came close to being killed by Diomedes, but was rescued by Apollo. Poseidon, aware of the hero's importance to future events, did the same when Aeneas was in mortal peril from Achilles. The daughter of Ares, Penthesilea, was purified by after a murder by Priam had come to repay her debt. With a dozen other Amazonians, she wreaked havoc among the Greeks until slain by Achilles, who regretted his actions as soon as he stripped her armor and beheld her beauty. Memnon, a prince of Ethiopia and son of Eos and Tithonus. Memnon had armor forged by Hephaestus, which made him formidable on the battlefield, until he met Achilles. At this point, Achilles had lost his own armor to Hector, when it was stripped from the body of Patroclus. So Thetis had persuaded Hephaestus to provide another set. With divine armor on both sides, Achilles won the duel, but a few hours later he was shot in the heel by Paris, who had used a poisoned arrow to finish the hero off. For the women, we have Helen of Troy, who we have met already too many times to need introduction. Hecuba, the foremost wives of Priam, she gave her husband 19 children, many of whom, including Hector, were mown down by Achilles outside Troy. She lived through the ghastly sack of the city, while enslaved in Greece she took gruesome revenge in kind on the slayer of one of her favourite sons. She was then transformed into a black dog with fiery eyes and became the companion of the witch goddess Hecate, or Hecata. Cassandra, the most beautiful of the daughters of Priam. Cassandra rejected the advances of Apollo and was so cursed to see the future but never be believed. She unveilingly warned the Trojans not to let Paris go to Greece, pleaded with them to not let the Trojan horse into the city, and, when taken as a slave into the household of Agamemnon, unsuccessfully warns the king of his impending doom. For this reason, anyone who prophesies misfortune to an unheeding world is called a Cassandra. Andromache, wife of Hector, she firmly disliked Helen and had a presentiment that present present. I can't say that. Why can't presentiment of the coming doom of her husband and children. She herself survived the war, and after a brutal period as the concubine of Achilles' son, Neopotamos, she married another Trojan survivor, and with her son later founded the city of Pergamum in Asia Minor. The key episodes of the Iliad of Homer. While nothing can replace reading Homer's masterpiece, preferably in archaic Greek, some short extracts may serve to give something the flavour of the world. Those below were taken wholesale from the Iliad, trying to recapture some of the swashbuckling spirit of the original. 1 minute.
There we go.
The Archaeans duly distributed the booty and decided that nothing. Yes!
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Sorry. Because you can hear that I'm doing something, now go away. Well, nothing can replace reading Homer's masterpiece, preferably in archaic Greek. Some short extracts may serve to give something of the flavour of the whole. Those below are taken wholesale from the Iliad and try to recapture some of the swashbuckling spirit of the original. Book 1, the Arcadians duly distributed the boot, decided that the lovely Chersonesus should be the concubine of King Agamemnon. But Chersonesus, priest of Apollo, came to the ship of the Archaeans to obtain his daughter's freedom. He brought with him a great ransom, but more importantly, he carried in his hands the scepter of Apollo, wrapped in the supplicant's wreath. Agamemnon loses Chersonesus and takes the concubine of Achilles, as the hero complains. All the Achaeans were unanimously in favour of respecting the priest and accepting the ransom, but not Agamemnon, who fiercely rebuffed him and sent him away. So the priest went in anger to Apollo, who loved him dearly. The gods heard his prayer and fired his deadly arrows at the Argives. The corpses lay thick on one another as the arrows flew among the host of the Archaeans. And now the Archaeans are taking the girl and the ship back to Cheris, and sending gifts as a sacrifice to God. But the heralds have just taken from Myten, the daughter of Beresius, from whom Achaeans had awarded to myself, and are giving Agamemnon to replace the girl he had lost. Pallas Athena took the whip and reins of the chariot and drove straight at Ares, who was in the act of stripping the armour of the mighty Periphas, son of Arceus, Archesius, the bravest of the Aetolians. Athena wore the helmet of Hades, so Ares could not see her. However, he did see Diomedes, went right at him, abandoning the corpse of Periphas. As they closed in combat, Ares unleashed his bronze spear, confident he had thus put paid to the hero. But Athena batted the spear aside, making it fly harmlessly over the chariot. Diomedes threw his spear in reply, and Athena made sure it went into the pit of Ares' stomach. Ares bellowed as loudly as 9,000 or 10,000 men and fled. Combat between Trojans and Achaeans was now left to rage unhindered. The tide of war surged to and fro over the plain. I'm going to finish this part, and then that'll be all. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
The Greeks begged Achilles to help. Quote, "We are facing calamity, and without your help we might well lose the fleet. The Trojans and their allies have camped right beside our ships and our ramparts. They imagine that nothing can now stop them from attacking our ships. Zeus aids them with his thunderbolts, and Hector in all his glory rages like a berserker. Up then, and late though it be, save the sons of the Achaeans who quarrel before the fury of the Trojans. Save the Danaans from destruction. Well, save the Danaans from destruction." Yeah. Achilles replies, "Agamemnon the dog can't even look me in the face. I have nothing to say to him and want nothing to do with him. He has wronged me and lied to me, and I shan't be fooled again. Since Zeus has made him mad, he can live with the mess he has made. I spit on his presence, and I do not give a damn about the man himself. He can offer 10, 20 times what he is offering, or everything he has or ever will be. He can promise me the wealth of the Orchomenos, or the Egyptians, or Thebes, but I will be avenged nonetheless, for the bitter wrong he has done to me, and I will not move. As the life ebbed from his Patroclus gasped, "Boast if you want, Hector. Zeus, the son of Cronos, and Apollo have given you the victory. It is not they who won this bout and took the armour from my shoulders. 20 mortals like you I could have slain with my spear. Now listen well. Take my words to heart. You have not much longer to live. Nemesis and death are closing in fast on you, and they will bring you down by the hand of Achilles." I have 2 more to read. Caleb, keep it down a little bit, mate. I just got to finish this, and then you can carry on. All right. Hector met Achilles. Like a soaring eagle which swoops from the clouds down to the lamb or timid hare, Hector swung his sword and leapt at Achilles, mad with fury. Achilles rushed to meet him, and bright as the evening star that outshines all others through the still night, so burns the spear in his right hand, eager for the death of noble Hector. Achilles struck as Hector advanced on him, and his spear went right through his neck. Achilles stood over him, swaying. "Hector, did you think you could get away with killing Patroclus? You couldn't, just because I was not with him. You fool, I was at the ships, not gone, and you awakened a far more dangerous foe. Patroclus, the Achaeans shall send off with a noble funeral, while you, with the dogs and vultures, can do what they want." And they took the ransom for Hector's body, but left 2 good cloaks and a body covering for Achilles to wrap Hector's body in to be taken. Achilles ordered his servants to wash and anoint the body, but he first took it to a place where Priam should not see it in its mangled and disfigured state. Afterwards, Achilles himself placed the body on his bier, and he and his servants carried it to the wagon. Okay. Afterwards, Achilles himself placed the body on its bier, and he and his servants carried it to the wagon. Achilles sobbed as he did so, invoking his dead comrade. "Do not be angry with me, Patroclus. If even in the same house, even in the house of Hades, you will hear that I have allowed his father to ransom Hector's body. The ransom was a worthy one, and you shall receive your due share." And that is all for now.
All right.